Welcome to the Bad Tutors podcast. If you're here for the newest, up-to-date, accurate information on the nerdy topics that are near and dear to your heart, well, let me tell you, you ended up in the wrong place. Here, we're all about hot takes and grandiose displays of misinformation. So stick along for the ride and you might just blow a blood vessel or two. So this episode is going to be a little bit more of a conversation back and forth. I want to talk about characters and the conflicts that they have. And this will hopefully give you more tools to become better at role playing, because me and you were talking about role playing I think maybe 2 weeks ago, and
something like that.
We talked about how we role play, and just this is a way that I really dive into my characters' mindsets. So today I want to talk to you about literary devices.
Oh shit, we're getting an English major in this episode? Damn.
And maybe a little bit. You know, I got 100% on the English portion of the ACT, so
hey,
no big deal.
That is impressive in its own way.
It carried me because my math score was so fucking bad.
I think I did about the same thing, yeah.
I want to talk about conflict within your character. And most people will intrinsically have these ideas woven into their characters through backstory or the way that they play their characters and their emotions. But I think it is important to identify the conflicts that you have. And in doing so, I think you can better display the conflicts. And I'm going to be talking about 6 different types of conflicts today. So the first one is very simple. Oh, this is going to be an example of the first one because Wilson wants to interject here.
Some good Wilson content. We love to see it.
Oh, he just wants to play fetch right now. So the first one is man versus man, and this is by far the easiest one. Also known as interpersonal conflicts. Man versus man would be a conflict between your character and another character, most often an NPC that is portrayed by whoever's running the game. So this would be enemies of your character, rivals, pets that are trying to interject on your podcast and coughing up some grass. That was really gross. Or sometimes even allies. It is okay to have conflicts between your character and another character. Just, make sure that it's done in a way that's productive and entertaining to the story.
Like Phantasmal Killer, yeah.
Yeah, of course. And make sure, if it's needed, that you are checking in with the other character. That could be a whisper on Roll20 or whatever website is like hosting your game. A text message if you're in person to the other person, or just breaking character really quick and asking. Interestingly, in our pirate campaign, my character has died a couple times now in the span of like 12 turns, and the first time I actually got a message that said, "Hey, do you want me to resurrect your character?" That's because a player messaged me that. Because, I mean, it's Pathfinder. I be building shit, okay? So
true.
Maybe I died. Yeah, maybe I died and I had another build in the chamber, which I always do. So I think the fact that they messaged me that, hey, do you want me to resurrect your character, is the most recent example of somebody just stepping out and making sure that everything that they're doing is, okay with another player. And in this case, wouldn't be causing player-to-player conflict or a little bit of disappointment on my end. So very appreciative of,
like 4 rounds after you were resurrected, I resurrected you from your second death, working under the assumption that if you got revived once, you probably wanted to be revived twice, and then found out that you had 5 negative levels and was like, oh fuck, do you still want to be revived? That's
Yeah,
kind of a lot at this point.
it was 6. Yeah.
Oh, 6. Jesus
We were
Christ.
getting to the point where if my character died again, another resurrection would put him at roughly like
Second or
18
third
max
level.
health.
Yeah.
And if you ever have as many negative levels as you do character levels, you're just gone forever.
Oh,
Uh,
really? I actually didn't know that because it's never been something that would have come up until
you
now.
know, I didn't think it would be either, and like I just kept seeing the number of negative levels that I had go up and up and up, and
Mm.
I was like, I think this is a thing. So I looked it up, and sure enough, it's a thing.
Oh, this is the thing.
Unless you know, of course, you have a wish spell. You know,
Right.
like the cop out of all things bad in Pathfinder.
Yep. Just wish it
Um,
away.
but yeah, so like the best example of this would be any villain that we've ever faced is a man versus man
Mm-hmm.
sort of conflict. Um, you know, we just fought a prestigious pirate captain that was a fucker. You know, we had been chasing down a couple of them. Those are all man versus man conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you are role playing those, I think these are the easiest ones. You have, you know, you have conflicts with these characters in a very real sense of I'm going to resolve this conflict by shooting them harder than they shoot me, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which is literal in our last encounter with him.
Right. And we did win. It was
We did.
costly.
Certainly was.
So that's man versus man. And
I would like to point out one bad example of this from a very early campaign of ours when we were playing 5th edition still in Storm King's Thunder is the adventure path or the camp whatever fucking wizards call
yeah,
them instead
yeah.
of adventure paths. We had a rather large disagreements between the party itself, not with a villain, where I believe you had some item that was plot necessary and another player used read minds or something to that effect to find out that you had it, but without like the real prior not without the character knowledge that that would even be a thing. It was just kind of a way to gain this information that we knew, a very meta play, I suppose I would frame it that way. And that led to a man versus man, not with only within the party, because you were looking to keep it, if I recall, and it was like the quest item that we needed at the time.
Yeah.
And this led to a real life mediation session between the two of you and our current DM at the time, and that is what we would call a bad example of man versus man, of keep the role play there. That's, we obviously allow some level of metagaming within our TTRPGs because in my opinion at least you kind of have to the degree of like, oh, there's a vampire, which will be thematic for the next book I am running, of I don't expect none of you to have the baseline information of, you know, garlic steak, cut off the head, killing vampires. Like, you are adventurers. You understand these things. Even if you've never faced one, you've heard about them. You've talked about them with someone. That's an acceptable level of metagaming of just like, I have this out of game experience, but my character would probably have it realistically, as opposed to, I know this as a player, but I'd really like my character to know it, so I'm going to do X thing to give them the in-game information that would be metagaming in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and you know, I think with that conflict that we had, it stemmed from a lot of things. Mostly it was just everybody was pretty new to D&D. I had played for 2 years, which seems like it should be a lot, but I was playing 4th edition with some absolute goons and my older brother in my parents' basement.
Yep.
And our game sessions were like an hour and a half, and it was all combat all the time. So
as 4th edition is wont to be.
Well, Yeah, and I think it was just the DM style is just you're in a dungeon and a dungeon and a dungeon and a dungeon and a dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think it was just like a lot of immaturity on my part of not knowing like how to play D&D in a way that um
Fa-
is like
facilitates
uplift.
fun for
Yes,
everyone.
exactly. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
uplifting the party and the story all the
Mm-hmm.
time. The second type of conflict that I want to talk about is man versus society. And we live in a society.
We do live in a society. You cannot argue that.
And so do our characters.
Mm-hmm.
In the game, they are within a society. They have cultural pressures, problems with government. This could be a very interesting trait for your character, um, and could be the entire story arc of your personal character's journey to try and change something that they see wrong with with the character's culture, or the culture that they're in, or just society in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they could be forced into an arranged marriage when they believe that marriage should come from love. It could go as far as trying to change the work culture of a capitalistic society where the upper class benefits from your labor and uses those profits to lobby politicians to keep the working class under their heel, forcing you and your offspring into a repetitive life of working a 9-to-5 job, never achieving your dreams, and eventually lulling you into mediocre life of acceptance while they achieve whatever the fucked up minds desire. In a game, of course, because that would never happen in real life. That would be a man versus society conflict.
Of course.
Okay, getting back into it. That
Mm-hmm.
could be, from our current example, there's factions that are sort of vying for power over this area of the seas that we're sailing. For my character, they have huge issues with a faction called the Ironborn,
Mm-hmm.
and are basically taking steps to dismantle it. The character that you were playing had huge issues with the Lost, right?
Yes, very, very big issues with the Lost. That was kind of the driving force of the arc that I want to
Just
say
kind of
just
finished.
concluded. Yeah, I'm sure there's some wrap up still, but
We have like a
overall it's
nice bow
done.
to tie on it. We had a lot of deaths that we have to figure out. Um, and then after that, I think we're moving on to the next arc of that story.
Mm-hmm.
However, our crew is assembled from there.
Yep.
Um, that being said, I think we're the only two characters that really had this sort of conflict in this campaign. I know a
Yeah.
lot of them had some conflicts that we'll talk about in a couple seconds here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think most of them were man versus man conflicts, and then I would say maybe man versus fate, which is a little down the line.
Yeah.
Our next one that I'm going to talk about is tough to build into your character from the beginning. This is going to be man versus nature. So this would be any conflict that the character has with forces of nature that are completely outside of their control. Weather is probably the most common way that this takes its form, but also environment is another way that you'll see this. So anytime your character is stranded in a desert, or trapped in a tornado, or experiencing a hurricane, this would be an example. This could also be a conflict that you have with the wildlife of an environment. Say you run into, some gnarly beasts that are just predators by nature, and you become prey. That's sort of a man versus nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I think out of our games that we've played together, me and you, our best example would be that time that we crashed in the desert in Starfinder. Do you remember?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So
big dragonflies go and fuck us up.
Yeah, we were in a spaceship, and then we got shot down by gigantic dragonflies with basically acidic cannons for mouths. They, did enough damage to our spaceship that it crashed into the surface of the planet.
Calling it a spaceship is a bit grandiose.
I know. So, basically like a futuristic plane, and our spaceship broke in half, and we were stranded. And from there, we had, maybe 2 or 3 sessions of being stranded in the desert without a real way out of it, besides picking a direction and walking. But we, eventually repaired the spaceship enough to get out. If I remember correctly, that was the resolution.
Something
or maybe
like that,
we
yeah.
repaired radios and called for help. But yeah, that's man versus nature. Pretty quick topic there.
Yeah, man versus nature as compared to the other ones, to me, feels more like a framing device to pull out of TTRPGs a little bit and just into the literary world. I think of something like My Side of the Mountain or like Hatchet, if you read either of those books in like
I've read Hatchet,
elementary to middle school. Like, obviously it is a form of conflict, but when you're talking about like man versus man and some of the other ones we'll get into, that could be like kind of like you said, baked into your backstory a little bit more, where like if the crash in Starfinder was it not in our game but like in my backstory, it's like, so what are you going to do with this other than, I know our friend Nick had a character whose goal was to kill lightning, the phenomenon of lightning.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going for man versus nature, it's your framing device of either this is the world you're going to be in, it's going to be like heavy survival or something, or like we were just saying of this is what you're doing now, you are trapped in a desert. It is obviously a conflict, but it feels like a grander framing conflict than just like that guy, he fucking hates your guts and wants you dead. It's like, well, nature be nature. Don't die.
Yeah.
That would suck.
I think nature is definitely more in the hands of whoever is running the game. They're going to present you with phenomenon of nature and have you deal with it more so than your character sets off to combat nature. Like, the idea of, defeating lightning is just frankly ridiculous, and I love it. Don't get me wrong.
Incredible.
That's hilarious.
It's so good.
But how do you actually accomplish that?
Right.
So we'll move on to the next one, which is our 5th type. Or I'm sorry, this is the 4th type. This is going to be man versus machine. Machine could literally mean like robots, or it could mean issues with technology. Say you're playing an old boomer, who can't keep up with the time.
Shout outs to our boy Ted, to date this episode. Shout outs to our boy Ted Kaczynski. He just died today. That man was very against the machine. You could say he was raging against the machine.
Wasn't he the Unabomber?
He was the Unabomber. But I've recently watched a couple videos like of his manifesto, and he was very anti-technology in how it was progressing. So my man had a man versus machine motive to him.
What are you doing, Ian? You're just actively admitting to researching the Unabomber.
Hey, YouTube think pieces, when you're out of video games, you gotta go somewhere. You know what I mean? There's only so many video essays on the platform.
Sure. I don't know what it is with you and Brum. You guys are just like, I love video essays, and I truly cannot stand them. I get so bored.
It's that thing that you put on in the background when you're doing something else. It's perfect. I don't actively focus on video essays unless it's shout out my girl Jenny Nicholson coming out with literally any video ever. Other than that, it's just background content.
So examples that we have, I think we have to go to Starfinder again for the carbon swarm. We sort of that
Yeah,
campaign died out. I think
for sure.
our game master was extremely zealous with his writing, and it was very good, but he introduced us to intergalactic star
Yes.
travel, and we were able to move between planets. And then he was like, I have to make cities on multiple planets,
Yeah.
and I have to make cultures, and you guys are now have access to everything. And I think he just got a bit overwhelmed there, which is fair.
Yeah. The project became very ambitious from here is my one very well crafted world to, oh fuck, I gave you thousands of goals to accomplish. One goal that has thousands of points to it. And fuck, now what?
Yeah,
Like, there was just so much to do there. It was simply too much to handle for, I don't know, anyone that isn't named Matt Mercer or Brennan Lee Mulligan.
right.
Like, if that's not your
So,
professional job, it
I
was
mean,
just too
outside
much to
of
handle.
that, we might have, I don't know, I would say even branching off of that, we fought some, in Starfinder, we fought some enemies that were obviously machines, but those felt more like a man versus man conflict than a man versus machine.
I mean, I would say to an extent, our trials against King Karathor in our pirate campaign were somewhat, at least, like technologically driven. Of we were fighting a vastly superior force than what we were. You know what I mean? Like,
That's true. That's true, because he had access to like
yeah.
crazy magic that we did not, and it literally felt like we were
Mhm.
fighting from the
Yeah,
back
while
foot
it
there.
wasn't
So
like
that's a good
literal,
point.
I mean, there were
Um,
automatons and things, but it wasn't as much like they be robots as much as like they didn't have railguns and shit. Like they weren't pulling Brotherhood of Steel bullshit, but everything was so much more advanced than we had access to as overall pretty classic pirates in a D&D setting where he was like, I'm an elf. I've had thousands of years to perfect my magical technology. Can you deal with it? Let's fucking find out.
yeah. This is now type number 5 for real. This will be man versus fate or man versus the supernatural. These are lumped together um,
Mm-hmm.
just because they're very similar. So this would be a conflict that could make up your character's whole story. They're the chosen one. They're rejecting their fate. They're rejecting their destiny. You know, it's something that is probably
It's step
with
two
you
in the
from the
hero's
beginning of
journey.
your character.
Step three, two, one of them. It's very
Yeah.
early on.
I think it's step 2. Yeah. Um, it could take a much more physical form as well. Like, say there is a being or a deity that has direct control over your fate, and you're literally trying to combat that, or just, um, let's say you're like the chosen one, or you are born into a role that
Mm-hmm.
you don't necessarily want, and you sort of reject that. That could be an example of the
Mm-hmm.
conflict of man versus fate. Or, maybe you're haunted or super sensitive to the spiritual world,
Mm-hmm.
um, et cetera, et cetera, like metaphysical stuff. Um, I, I like the idea of a narrative sort of steering you into the realization that you are being controlled by fate, being controlled by
Mm-hmm.
a more powerful being, and you combating it. But I don't blame people for wanting to start there either. It gives you the call for adventure uh,
Mm-hmm. For
from
a
the get go.
TTRPG sense of it, it feels kind of like you have your two reins and you're driving the story, and then you hand one of them off to your DM, and it's like, I still want to be in control of my character, but you give me some guidance. You give me kind of where you want this to go.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the times giving your DM that sort of control over your character is really good, because then they have more toys to play with and more ways to weave you into their story. And so I think this is definitely flavorful and favorable for a lot of players. You know, you have paladins, clerics, in Pathfinder you have oracles and inquisitors, everybody who's an agent of a god or higher being can have this conflict. And you know, the conflict doesn't have to be you rejecting your fate or the supernatural. The conflict just comes because you are fated for a path, and so now your character has to uphold your god's morals, has to act in your god's will, or you know, etc., etc.
And if they don't want to do that, that in itself is the other side of the coin of this conflict, of you're rejecting it, and how and why are you rejecting it? How are you dealing with this rejection? Like the idea of a paladin that sees something that would be against their god's will, but based on the context of the situation goes, I need to go against the oath that I have taken, and then the moral and mechanical ramifications, depending on how strict your DM is at the time, of figuring out where, kind of like a where do I go from here? I've turned this down, I've rejected it, gone away from it, whatever it is. And now I need to, my character needs to find themselves again and figure out what they do now that the thing they have lived their life by is no longer what they thought it was.
Yeah, and I think a good example of that side, I don't know if any of us or our party members have really explored that space, but in Critical Role Campaign 2, Travis Williams' character, Fjord Stone, did. He was a warlock that rejected his patron, rejected the being that gave him power, the thing that he was driven to help and release, yada, 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 and accepted someone else as his being. I think in our group, we have a player currently sort of going through this conflict in Captain Brineback, the captain of our pirate crew. We got a lot of insight into him these last couple weeks of playing that campaign. And I think a lot of the stuff that he is portraying right now is exactly this sort of one character is fated to achieve or act in this way, and he's sort of combating that with a flavorful retooling of the leadership feat. And I think it's
is that?
I think that's what it is.
I never even considered that. I think you're right. I just never thought about that. Yeah.
Like, I don't have confirmation. I haven't talked to the player or the GM about it, but I think if I were to take a guess, that's where it came from. Because
I'd say that makes sense.
There's definitely mechanical support for what he's doing in leadership. It seems like he's just got a slightly weaker character that was sort of also inhabiting the same body, or one was taking over the other, and they just had a very real split. That's what happened in that last fight. Like they actually split entities.
A literal split.
Yeah, so I think, you know, in that character or characters, however you want to look at it, that conflict is like kind of like a sine wave, and it's like going up and down, and like
we already said we didn't do well in ACT.
Sure. So it looks like, you know, one thing is going. I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. Going away from their fate and then coming back to it and like bouncing back and forth. I think that's probably the best example that we've seen, unless you can think of any that I haven't.
I can't, but to give you a little bit of a spoiler, I might be doing something very similar to that with the new character that I will be playing in the pirate campaign.
I'm excited. I don't want to know anything about it. I want it all to be organic because like I could ask you and you would just tell me because I'm sure you're excited about it and you want to be talking about it, but I think we should wait.
I do. And I am definitely going to, at some point here, just talk about the character arc that I just completed because I think it's one of the best ones I've ever finished personally. And I just want to talk about it a little bit while we're talking about these conflicts. Yeah. But I want to get through them all first.
All right, well, let's go to the next one. That would be man versus self. This conflict is my personal favorite.
What? No.
Yeah, I oftentimes find that this conflict will shape my characters, and it happens sometimes just entirely within my own consciousness.
And sometimes just within the druid class.
Sometimes, okay, listen. Druid is just, it does not gel with me. No matter how many times I try to butter that bread, you know, it never works. The butter's too cold.
I think I've said it on this podcast before. You're not allowed to play a druid in any of my campaigns going forward because I know you'll just be something else within 3 sessions.
Yeah, it's true though. I just don't want to play druid. I get it in my head.
It's the only restriction I will ever put on a player not being able to play a class.
And it's only for my own good. You know, I'm sure I could make it work.
It's for the best of everyone.
It's just like I would just hate it. I would hate it.
I mean, I agree. I also don't like druids all that much. There's nothing that the druid has that I want that another class doesn't do as well, if not better. Even beast shape you can just achieve in different ways, and it's at least as good.
You know, a wizard is really good at beast shape.
They are, as long as you milk them.
Okay. All right, we should explain that.
So man versus... yeah, we probably should.
So the best way to get poisons in Pathfinder is to be a wizard, beast shape into something with a poison, take a specific feat, and then using the alternate wilderness rules, there is a harvesting of venom or poisonous, you know, secretions, whatever it may be, that they can do with a survival check. And if the creature is willing, it's extremely simple. So you do that, and anything that's harvested uses the wizard's DC, which is oftentimes higher than the creatures that you're harvesting the venom from. So that's why we say you just milk it, you know, quote unquote.
We have Tyler and I for years now have tried to theory craft how to make poisons work, and if you're not doing that, the answer is just drugs. Drugs are objectively better than poisons for what you're trying to accomplish.
It's so funny because
dedicating a wizard and a second character to be able to do this is just maybe
not worth it.
It's just not worth it to run a Pathfinder campaign.
It's just so funny because like the downside of drugs mechanically are just so much better than any of the poisons. They instantly take the stat damage. The buffs that they get, if any, are negligible. They're like, you don't feel pain effects. Perfect. Nobody uses pain effects because most of them deal non-lethal damage.
Correct. Yeah, as a DM right now, I will say most of the time, stat drain on enemies is just so useless.
Yeah, like, that's the other thing.
I drained 4 con from them. It's like, unless you can get rid of the rest of their 32 con, that's useless because it's, every 2 con they lose 10 hit points. And it's like, cool, you've already done 200 points of damage. It's not even necessarily
that.
It only lowers max HP. Not current HP. Yeah,
every 2 con is just 1 off of every hit die that they have. And that's not even that good.
Exactly. No, it's not.
You could deal 4 con damage and deal like only 20 damage. And then the fighter with the 2-hand sword walks up, hits him twice, and deals like 60 damage. It's like, all right.
And your 4 con damage was like a 3rd level spell.
Yeah.
that stat damage, unless it's like dex or strength, or I suppose intelligence if you're going against a caster, is really only to be used on players
Yeah.
because it holds as long as the character doesn't die.
So the man versus self conflict sort of appears in identity crises, managing emotions, or dealing with the mental illness that your character might have. Um, Internal conflicts within characters are hard to convey while role playing your character, especially because both sides of that conflict are the player's responsibility. Identifying how your character would feel in the situation is your choice, and then how they deal with those emotions is also your choice. So you're constantly thinking about, how does my character feel about seeing their friend get absolutely fucking clapped? How
Right.
much does that really matter to them if they're more selfish and stuff like that? Now for me, I really enjoy assigning ideals to my character at the beginning of the story, things that they
Mm-hmm.
think are very important to them, and then as those ideals are challenged, and they face that conflict, they go through sort of like an existential crisis, very similar to the ones that I have every night as I lay in bed. A great example of
Of
this would
course.
be a meal. My current character literally performed a ritual to sort of go through an ego death and completely erase his existence from everybody's mind in terms of that identity of Emil.
Right.
That was a decision that I made because from the beginning, he never wanted to be a leader. He was born into a situation where he was sort of groomed to be a leader of a navy, and he didn't want that. He wanted to study magic. He wanted to see the world, and he was stuck learning military tactics, in a classroom. So for me, when I had to step up in the group during a situation where our normal leader was incapacitated in
Mm-hmm.
his own madness, um, my character was very frustrated with that. So after that situation where he had to step up and he had to be the one to inspire others, to lead them, to make those important decisions that affected so many people, um, that's when he made that decision to remove Emil from the collective consciousness of the entire world. Super cool
Mm-hmm.
feat. I talked about it in episode 1. If you haven't heard it, you should go listen
Yep.
to it. Um, but yeah,
And
that's what I did with Emil.
and I'm sure I mentioned it in episode 1, but just based on this, I need to, again, because I'll always plug it, bring up my favorite ability in all of Pathfinder, which is from the Way of the Healing Hand Monk, which their capstone ability, you can revive. I haven't looked at it in a while. An absurd amount of people that you're friendly with at the cost of erasing yourself completely from all of history. Your name can never be spoken again. Anytime it's been written is erased, and no one has any memory of you ever again. No one can even. It's like fucking 1984 when someone dies and they just get rid of them, but it's actually real. It is mechanically real, and I love it. It's my favorite ability in all of Pathfinder.
Yeah, I mean, that's just simply amazing. And that would be like the pinnacle of a man versus self conflict. Do I preserve
Mm-hmm.
myself, or do I do something that I feel strongly about? Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's,
A complete selfless
yeah.
act to save everyone around you, even though no one will know that you ever did it.
The other character that I want to talk about here, because like I said, this is the character conflict that I pretty much write every character around, um, is my necromancer that I played, Drassel. Long story short, he was looking for more power to resurrect his mother that had died.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I don't think I ever
well,
knew
we
that.
never really got to see that, but in my
True.
head, as I'm getting possessed by an even more powerful, almost god status necromancer and doing his will, um, I was constantly thinking about how can I get rid of this being so that I can get back to what matters to Drassel. And ultimately, we never got there, which happens. I think Drassel still had one of the better stories out of my characters, but I think Emil is probably my favorite. Mechanically, he's amazing to play. It's so many things come down to just a coin toss of this is either going to work really well or I'm going to fucking die. And 2 times now that coin flip has come up tails and I've died.
It certainly has. But yeah, I definitely give you credit. I think, as you saying that it's your favorite one to write, I think you're very good at it as well. It's something that I need to do more. It's one of my biggest things that I need to kind of step up on in my role play, because I feel like I don't have a ton of that same kind of conflict. I just kind of either have a couple set things maybe, but they're all very loose, and then just kind of roll with it and play with the story as is a little bit more. And I think being able to bring in more feelings of the character themselves is just good overall for it. And it's something that, like you said, of setting it at the beginning of a campaign, I feel a lot of times that if I have something and it's like, oh well, this is challenged, but it's what the party wants, that I just kind of go along with it, even just to, like, drive the narrative a little bit more instead of having that kind of a conflict with
Well, that's the other thing is like when you are a player and you're in a party, you do have a sort of responsibility to adhere to what the party wants. So like I was saying, Emil stepped up and took a leadership role, but he fucking hated every second of it, and he made sure everybody knew he had a big blowout on the one person that was responsible for leading this party, and then he basically committed ego suicide and erased the character for a little while. And I think, I said it's great to write it in from the beginning, but also, like I said, a lot of this is just your head canon. You can sort of change what your character stands for, and as long as it's not a massive break from like the reality that your character's been living in the way that you've played it so far, nobody's going to be like, do you really believe, X, Y, and Z, and you've believed this the whole time?
Yeah, as long as you're not like using it flippantly and just going, well, it's fine. My paladin's party can murder 34 people in cold blood, and it's just like, boys will be boys. Like, you can't just sidestep it completely, but then going the other way and going, well, I need to kill the party now because they're super evil, is like, maybe figure something else out. Or if you do feel the need to retire the character based off of something like that, like, that's fine, I would say.
Yeah,
Like,
retire your character.
Maybe you don't want to necessarily, but like, that's fine. Not everyone's arc has to end in death or the completion of the campaign.
Yeah, I mean,
like we've said before, I realistically should have retired my bard in Rise of the Rune Lords after we got our home base. His arc was complete.
Yes.
Was that my fault for making a very simple arc? Yes, absolutely it was. But also his goal in life was to get a place and kind of rule over it. And then he got it and went, well, I guess I'm going to keep adventuring.
Well, I think at that point,
he should have just retired.
There was a responsibility to the party, and also there was huge stakes in the
Certainly.
world. So I don't blame you, and I don't think anybody'd be like, why is Falsum going anywhere? He's got a fucking castle. All he ever has wanted is a
No, of
castle.
course not. Yeah.
I think a lot of the man versus self conflicts happen in that way, where it's like, I could leave right now and be happy. I have my castle. Why do I keep traveling with these people? And it's like, I want to see them succeed, or at least I want to see all of them come home after defeat. And very much as the bard that was playing a huge healing role and a huge buffing role, that makes a lot of sense to just stay with them for their welfare.
I could have switched over and played Jan.
You could have, but why?
Now there's a man versus self. The ego of Falsum not brutally killing a man in the most deranged way possible. It's a little bit of man versus man, but like it was man versus self. There was no second man for the verses. There was just a body that was maybe gonna get killed.
You know, you saying that sort of brings me to my last point, is that all of these literary conflicts can be in tandem with each other, and with each other person that you're playing with. You can all experience them together, and you can experience multiple conflicts separately throughout the story, and experience, conflicts with each other, or whatever it may be. But, when you're making these characters and you're making these decisions in character, I think I would suggest, rather, more people should be thinking about choosing one of these, not nature. Don't choose man versus nature. Definitely. That's weird.
There are very few instances in which man versus nature can be your driving conflict.
Yeah, but
when it is an option, go for it. But they're few and far between.
But choose a conflict. There's gonna be the overarching one, and Carrion Crown, your game, we obviously have some very fucked shit going on that has to do with a cult that worships a tyrant that, I'm gonna do air quotes for everybody watching at home, is definitely dead, and
he's definitely dead. What do you mean?
Yeah, he's a lich though, so like,
well, don't think about it.
Anyways, I guess what I'm trying to say is, when I write characters, I like to choose something that they have an issue with, and that could be a number of things. Mostly themselves is usually how I go, and don't read into that too much. But there's something that's been brought up in our group a couple times that I want to say here as well. A natural 1 is as good for the story as a natural 20. And when we say this, what we mean is, when you tell a good story, success is great, but a well-timed failure that beats you down and shatters your character's resolve is equally as great, sometimes better.
To kind of add to that a bit, I'm blanking on any like really good examples for it, but when you think of stories that you love, just in general, throughout media, you think, if you look back on them critically, there are a lot of things where you go, man, if they thought critically for half a second, the characters I'm speaking as, the conflict wouldn't have happened. And you go, wow, they were really stupid, and this makes no fucking sense. But the answer to that is, well, if they thought critically about it and everything went incredibly well, that would not be your favorite story anymore.
Exactly.
That would be one of the most boring stories you've ever heard of. To talk about, because I can't think of anything perfect, to talk about 40K a little bit. Not that you know a ton about it, so I'll keep it very basic. The whole driving force of the Horus Heresy, the big thing that is kind of started the issues in 40K for the Imperium, at least, is like, the joke in that setting is the Emperor of Mankind is an awful father and didn't treat his kids, who are the Primarchs, very well, and was really fucking stupid, didn't tell them things, all of that. And it's like, man, if he was just a little bit better, none of this would have happened ever. And there's, of course, a lot more that I could go into of why he wasn't that way, but that's not important to the point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is if he was the perfect dad and told them everything, and half of his sons didn't fall to chaos, the Horus Heresy wouldn't have happened, which is the plot.
Yeah.
Like, without the plot, without failure, nothing is interesting. No one likes... There's an old Henry Rollins bit that I'll talk about a bit here, of you go into a theater and you see two movies, and one of them is about... it's just called Happy Guy, and it's a guy that he likes his job, his boss is great, his family loves him very much, his wife and two kids are the perfect family, they're the perfect family unit, the American dream, and that's the movie. And then there's another theater that's showing Deranged Lunatic Psychopath, which is about a monster of a human being doing atrocious things and just being an awful person. And one of these theaters has a line around the block with people lining up to go in there. And never is it going to be Happy Guy. No one wants to see perfect stories. As much as you go back and criticize things and go, that was a dumb decision, why did they handle it this way? It's because it doesn't make things fun. Failure in a story that you're telling is fun. Conflict is good. We need conflict to drive a plot. And if there isn't any, then what's the point?
Yeah, and I think a more classical example that I can think of off the top of my head is the story of Frankenstein. Frankenstein creates his monster, and in the original telling, all the monster wants is a father. He wants Frankenstein to be that father. He is his creator. But when Frankenstein's monster achieves life and is born, essentially, Frankenstein, the doctor, recoils at the horror that he just made. And then the whole story is told as this monster commits horrible, horrible acts. And they're all acts of vengeance or, retaliation against Frankenstein. And you just think, if he just accepted his creation as his creation and loved it, then none of this would have happened. He never would have experienced the loss that he did. But it's such a great story because at every point he made the wrong decision. And it's a classic for that reason. Right. So the nerd in me hopes that the next time you are building a character, you choose a conflict point and make it the focal point of your character's story. But even if you don't, you will have these conflicts in one way or another as you go through the stories. It's up to you to choose how your character faces these conflicts, and it's up to you to choose how you as a player engage with them. And hopefully the idea of this episode and me and you talking about this is to get people thinking in this way of more in their character's head and less so reactive to what's happening around them as a player, and more so as their character. And I do want to say our group has gotten way better at that.
We have, yeah.
And I do want to talk about our current group's campaign because a lot just happened.
Yep.
So you want to start?
Before we get into that, there are two things that I want to add, and one of them will tie into that a little bit. One thing is, I'm sure we've talked about it at some point, is the concept of giving your DM daggers for your character. I might have the colloquialism wrong, but I believe that's what most people refer to them as. Of in your backstory, you give the DM something to fuck with you, a dagger to drive into your side at some point, whether it's, to pull an example out of Crown, the Carrying Crown, the campaign that I'm running, one of our characters was very family driven. There was some conflicts within the family, of course, but I've been slowly killing off members of his family, because he gave them to me in a way that I could work with and create new conflict around the overarching conflict that is Carrion Crown itself. And I think that's always something good, and I feel like in general I would say newer players don't do that as much, where you don't like, it's just give them people, give them a thing to deal with. We'll talk about it at some point. We just did a session 1 of a new campaign as well. And why I'm saying this will tie into my next point. The character that I've made hasn't said anything about it yet since we only did the first session, but his whole thing is that he was a slave previously. We're going back to slavery, just like in Starfinder.
Always with these
I
slaves.
know.
I don't know what it's like to be a slave.
We don't know what it's like to be a slave, but his thing will be, I suppose he will have a sub villain at some point that I have talked with the DM of that campaign with, and you tie those things in. He has a family to engage with. He has his own villain, and that won't be the driving force of the campaign, obviously, but there is something to do. Giving your DM something to work with and create that conflict is something that you should always do within a character, in my opinion. You don't have to be like, all right, here's every trauma they've ever had and how it affected them, but just a little something to work with here and there is important to include.
Yeah, and writing a character's backstory does not have to be writing a story.
Novel.
It could be
right.
a note card with like an ally, an enemy, and then like something that they love. It doesn't even have to be a person. Maybe they love an idea, or they love a trait or a virtue that they see in other people, so that DM can take that little idea and tuck it away. And then, in the words of Liam O'Brien, again from Critical Role, you can wait around a corner with a baseball bat that he has wrapped in barbed wire and stuck nails through. And just when you think you're in the clear, you round that corner and get met with the baseball bat of your character's trauma and everything that matters to them right to the face. And now you have to deal with it. And those moments are the best moments for storytelling. And
exactly.
And that's really all you're trying to do when you play a TTRPG. The DM, GM, storyteller, whatever they may be, is running the story, but you need to add to that however you can. So that would be in a backstory, that'd be in your moments of role playing. And I think in this campaign that we're running now is everybody's greatest displays in our group for that. We have the captain, who has made just the most astonishing revelations about their character, and really like pulling apart everything that matters to their character in a way that none of the characters in the crew know, but now all the players have sort of heard the visualization of why everything that he was doing was happening. And it's a little meta, but in the best way, like you were talking about. And we just had a lot of character losses. We lost like 3 members of our crew, your character being one of them.
That ties very well into the second point I wanted to make before we get into the kind of things that have been happening in our campaign. Although it is something that happened in this campaign for the first time in any of our games, which I think is incredibly important going forward for our future games, is we sat down in character. And I don't think it has to be in character. I think you can do this out of character as well and have it be just as effective. You need to tell the other players in the group, whether in or out of character, what your goals are. Because we all know it's great to have a crazy revelation that nobody saw coming and have it be incredibly impactful and super cool. But if no one but you and the DM know that that's a thing that you want to do, it can be very difficult to accomplish this. We had like I said, a sit down in character and just like kind of had a backstory dump in a good way, not just like exposition overload, but like all of us talking about what brought us there and what we are looking to do going forward. So we all know how to facilitate each other's goals. Say my goal, not taking this campaign as an example, is I want to go kill this man. But he isn't involved in any of the main story that might be like kind of time sensitive or something to that effect, but it is integral to my character's story, and that is what he wants to do. If no one in the game knows that's what I want to do, it's probably not going to happen, because they would go, why are we going to go kill him? There's demons to kill. Like, we have shit to do currently. Why would we do this?
Yeah, exactly. It's
so like, you have to tell them, and everyone should be on the same page of what everyone wants to accomplish.
The other thing is that it's not an accomplishment that will ever play out as grandiose, as great as you see it in your head. Nobody's going to know what you achieved if they don't know why you achieved it. My character wants to, like I said earlier, remove a basically a law enforcement faction from the map, or at least critically cripple them.
ACAB indeed.
Yeah. And so in doing so, I revealed my character has a personal relationship with the head of this faction. This is the faction that was training him to take over and, sort of inherit the reins and the military and naval force and go and enforce law on the seas. And in that sit down that we had, I told everybody, I want to kill my family. And everybody's just like, so you had a tough childhood and you need to go and kill your entire family? And that's when I revealed how much more it meant to my character than just, I had a rough childhood and I want revenge. It's, I had a rough childhood, I want revenge, and there's tyranny happening, and I want that to stop. So like you said, it's important to get everybody on board, because not only are you in a game that everybody else has to experience this and sit through, they're going to question your motives. They're going to, be a part of it. They can also help you accomplish those goals.
Yeah, like with that character, before we had that little powwow, you had engaged with a couple NPCs, and all of us were a little bit just like, okay, yeah, cool, you're doing your thing. We're gonna let you do your thing, obviously. It's clearly important. But it was just like, he's doing his thing. And that's all we kind of had to go off of with it. And once we knew the context and backstory to not all of it, but some of it at least, it was a lot easier to empathize and realize what needs to happen next, even if we don't exactly know how to get there.
Right. And I think like what you're talking about is I basically found a member of the Ironborn, and at first I was like, fuck you, man, you're not allowed on our ship, and I'm taking a hard stance on that. And then he was like, you don't like the Ironborn? And I was like, no, fuck those guys. And he's like, me neither.
Like, perfect, I hate them too.
And then we had a very great NPC that lasted for a good while, but is probably dead now.
Yeah, realistically. He might not be.
I guess I should maybe check in
really
with him.
Funny.
I've got kind of like that sending stone thing. I can see if I can get into contact with him.
I remember last time you tried, you couldn't.
Right.
So, who knows?
I basically heard him getting his ass kicked. In like a... oh my god, what is the jail on a ship called?
The Brig.
The Brig, thank you.
I'm surprised I got that before.
I know, I just had like a total fucking brain fart. Anyways, please tell us about your character.
Oh, you want me to talk about me if you insist? Yeah, so I just concluded my character arc, and after the session concluded, I was talking with a couple of our friends as everyone was kind of leaving, and we stayed on and talked about it. I think it's the best character arc that I have ever written or been a part of for myself, certainly. I've had like some good moments in things in other characters, but this is the most realized and fleshed character, and I think that his story couldn't have concluded more perfectly. The character was a soulbound summoner that was devotion and desire, desire being the main character. What it was is, we've mentioned the Lost a little bit earlier when talking about these conflicts. Him and who was slowly like drip fed to revealed to have been his fiance at the time, joined the Lost because they were kind of a star-crossed lover of like a somewhat Romeo and Juliet situation. They were from different well-established trade families. Desire was a kind of outcast and bastard of the family, so he had some of the rights and privileges of being part of the prestigious Rosewood family that we all know and love. And his fiance was part of a different trade company, but they fell in love and ran away to join this cult. And in the initiation ritual, it was revealed that Desire had to perform a sacrifice to complete his initiation into the Lost, but he then found out that the sacrifice to be made was his fiance, and he purposefully botched this ritual and made it go awry. They were trying to summon basically a greater demon of the infernal plane to help them win their wars and, you know, just have a greater demon, normally pretty helpful. And in this, he bonded, he lost the physical being of his fiance, but bonded her to himself within his soul. And the reason that their names were Devotion and Desire is that the tieflings that made up this cult have what are known as virtue names. Things like Devotion, Desire, Murder, who is the villain that we spoke of earlier.
Truth.
That just kind of... And Murder. Both of them were... And Truth as well.
I'm just naming more, like Truth, Sorrow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorrow, a member of our crew. It kind of indicates how they will be by name alone. Desire, also known as Colin Rosewood, only at the time desired more power. He wished to join this cult and not ascend, but be more powerful within it. And Cassidy Otherman, who was his fiance, was just devoted to him. And that was the driving force within that. I definitely iced a character, and that feels... Or, sorry, fridged a character, and that feels kind of bad looking retrospectively. But, whatever. And fridging, if you don't know, is the concept of a female character being killed off for no other reason than to drive the plot forward of a male character. Did not do that on
I think
purpose,
you'll make up for it if I can guess where you're going with the
I certainly am, yeah. Mm-hmm. But with this change and her being bonded to him, the name Desire was still consistent, but the meaning of it shifted. It shifted the desire to bringing back the one that he loved at any cost. That was his only goal. It was his driving force throughout the whole campaign. And I drip fed a little bit of it here and there. At one point, we went to the magic school in the world and began asking questions about, well, this is what's going on. How do I get back what I have lost? And it had been told to him that basically the rules of the infernal plane is kind of a one soul for another kind of deal. So he knew at that point that if he were to achieve his goal and bring her back, he was going to lose at least part of himself if not all of himself. But that was his goal. That's all he cared about. And as things progressed, in the last climactic fight that we had, she was banished to the infernal plane and seemed to be irretrievable. The sense of her being there that was in his soul, because he could always feel her in some way, at least, even though most of the time she was actively summoned. But regardless, he could no longer feel it. And that obviously was not good. We had a monkey's paw in this last battle that we were in. And as we've said and alluded to throughout this episode, things were not going well. Things were going very poorly. Before I made my the last wish that I made, 3 characters had died, were either dead or comatose. And he knew that with his wish, he needed to be the one to do something about this. And he made a wish saying, give me the power to end this, avenge my crew, and Cassidy. And the DM chose to make me a CR19 Star Archon, who was nuts. That was so fun. Playing as an incredibly high CR creature. Overwhelming, but so cool. And he was given a weapon that turned him into this. And before he grabbed it and actually became this Archon of Law, he was told, if you do this, you are entering into a pact from which you cannot return. This will be your fate. Know this. It was like, well, okay. My love is lost for all I know forever, mostly because we couldn't just go into another plane. The last 3 arcs have been going into planes to save someone. We were gonna do something else. The story has to conclude at some point. So part of it was like a meta-analysis of, we can't just do another arc of this, especially because this arc was already centered on me. I'm not gonna take 2 full arcs to myself. There was a bit of that, but also the realization of what was going on in character, and he took this pact and became this incredibly powerful creature and turned the tides of the battle that we were in, sewing up and killing a couple of the enemies that were fucking massacring us, and was able to revive your character, Emil, as well, and was called back to his plane of existence, or his new plane of existence, I should say. As it was told to him, the job was done. Your time to return is now. And he made his way up the stairs, and we'll see which ones of our friends listen to this episode. He made a final wish that only one person was able to overhear, that really wrapped up his arc completely. You're actually one of the people that did not hear this wish because you failed a
I had
check, by the
5
way.
negative levels, which is a penalty of 5 to every roll that I make.
I am not blaming you for failing the check. I really like that only one of you actually overheard it. As I was making this wish, I asked our DM, hey, I think this is something, like, I don't want to just keep it fully secret. I want to have people have the chance to overhear this. So he was like, do you want it to be a high or a low DC? And I was like, I think I want it to be a low DC, because I think it would be good if at least one person were to overhear this. And our friend Trevor did pass the check and heard me make a wish that said, return Cassidy to her life and form in this mortal plane. Keep her safe. The crew needs her. So it'll be revealed early on in the next session. That's why I don't feel bad telling you this. I am playing her going forward now. She will be my next character. I'm not sure exactly what the build is going to be yet, and I have an idea that fits into the conflicts we've talked about earlier, but I'll leave that secret still. But that being the conclusion of his arc, of not only did he accomplish the current goal, but he was able to achieve his desire even though he will not see the fruits of that. He won't see the wrap up of it, at least directly in game. I'd like to think that as an Archon of Law, he can probably see it still. But besides the point, he was able to finish his goal. So I completely concluded the thing that I was trying to accomplish down to the wire at the last second, and was able to completely fulfill everything I wanted for the character. And I just don't think there was a more perfect end to that. That is exactly how I wanted it to end, even though I didn't know exactly what was coming necessarily.
So I'm going to ask some questions that you don't have to answer, but I am curious. What does Cassidy's story look like going forward without desire? She was devoted entirely to him, like he said. Have you thought that sort of thing out?
Not entirely, but I have a little bit. Going forward, I told our DM that, like, for picking her class and building things, I was like, I still made a wish to make this happen. So I think that should still play into it, because it's a monkey's paw wish. It's not just a normal wish. Those kind of things should still tie into it and play into it. And I think based off of that, the new devotion, she'll be going by Cassidy from now on as well, since that is her, basically a different person. It's an alternate form of her. She will be going as her real name at this point. Based on the crew needs her part of the wish, the devotion that would still be tied into it would be that to the crew, because we have built very close ties within the crew, as pirates should. So I think it will be a lot of that, and talking with our DM about what we kind of need as a party. She's probably going to be some form of a tank as well, to really be able to defend people and keep people safe. I haven't entirely fleshed out what I want that to look like, not only mechanically in class, but also in story yet. But that's the kind of direction that I want it to head.
Yeah, that's great. And I can't wait to see. I think we should talk a little bit more about roleplay and just starting a character in another episode, because I think at least from my stance, I find a mechanic that I love and I want to build out of that. And I don't know if that's the same for you, but I know it's not the same for everybody else. So I think we should talk about that a little bit.
We are similar in that sense of both of us have a build, and then we're told a campaign and go, okay, I'll now make a character around this. In talking with some of our other friends, they're like, oh, I have a backstory and an idea, and then I make a class to suit that. We have very diametric views of that, where we both are like, this class is sick, I'm building this, gods be damned what the character looks like. I have no fucking clue yet, but I have a build. I specifically have a build. We talked about that in the first episode of us just going through builds that we have, where I don't necessarily know that all of our friends also have that.
Yeah, that's true.
Where they might have, where we have 5 builds loaded in the chamber, they have 5 backstories. They're ready to go with a new character that I'm sure, based on how we all play, would be tooled to the campaign and maybe changed a little bit to fit a little bit better. But they have that ready where we're like, all right, I'm playing Tower Gun. I can come up with a character to suit this. Sure.
Can I make Vigilante fit into this fucking campaign? Please let me do it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
That's my newest character.
Mine's a boxer with a pun name, and it's great. I'm waiting for everyone to figure it out. We haven't had combat yet. I'm so excited.
But I think we can wrap here. That was a great discussion.
It was, yeah. I like talking about conflict within characters in the role-playing aspects of it, because it's something that I feel I need to be better at in TTRPGs. It's not something that I go, oh, I'm awful and I'm gonna beat myself up over it, but like, it's something to work on. It's like you said about 4th edition in your game, that being all combat. A tabletop role-playing game is just group storytelling. Whether it's through combat or role-playing, it is a story that you're all crafting together. And I think to probably most of our friends, that's the draw of it. If that wasn't the draw of it, you would just play Kingmaker in Wrath of the Righteous. If you care about the mechanics, you would play one of the now fantastic games that has been made. You'd play Divinity 2 if you're looking for a heavy mechanical thing with that. Not to say that either of those or any of those games don't have a good story with them. I'm sure they do. Divinity certainly does, and I mean, the other two are Pathfinder Adventure Path, so I'm sure they're at bare minimum serviceable, and I'm sure they're a lot better than that if those are the games that got made. But you're telling a story with your friends. There's a reason you show up every week, and it isn't to go, I power attack 4 times. Good, they're dead. That's an element of why you show up, but you're there to craft a story with people you care about and characters that you care about. And that's not something that you should be forgetting about in, I think, either of our opinions.
Yeah, I think, like you said, tactically, I think I'm good there. I've got a great understanding of the mechanics. It lives literally rent-free in my brain all the time. I'm only ever thinking about Magic, Pathfinder, or anything that I shouldn't be.
You are my living rule book when I run Carrying Crown.
And I think this is certainly going to help me going forward. I'm going to try and get away from man versus self conflicts
and man versus nature, so you don't build another fucking druid.
Of course that's truly the man versus nature conflict. Is
just you making
is me trying
to
get into a situation where I care about nature within a character, which is weird because I care about the environment in real life, you know.
Yeah,
like green energy is something that every time I vote, I try and vote towards somebody who cares about that. God, I fucking hate Druid.
Yeah, it's a class that just feels like it locks you in so much.
I'll say, in this next character that is a vigilante, I am playing a really poor choice of mechanics. The damage is gonna be like hit or miss. It's gonna be all or nothing, in a way that none of my characters ever have been before. And like,
you already said you're playing vigilante. You don't have to say it twice.
Vigilante can be really strong, and like I've sat down and made a vigilante that was strong with like pretty just basic stats, and the stats that I rolled are kind of cracked, and I was just like, I gotta stop dealing hundreds of damage in a round.
You want to talk about some cracked damage? We'll talk about my new character.
Yeah, exactly. Let somebody else just fucking pump out the numbers. I'll be an accountant. That's what my character is. That's half of my character is an accountant. So anyway, I think that's a good spot to wrap up the episode.
Yeah, I'd certainly say so. So thanks, of course, as always, for listening. We hope you have a great rest of your week, weekend, day, whatever you happen to be listening to this, and we hope you tune in to the next one. But for now, I'm Ian.
And I'm always Tyler.
And with that, we will sign off.
Next episode is about the struggles
Ted
of
Kaczynski.
the bourgeoisie.